Everyone has a story to tell. Welcome to DingoTalk, where we explore the experiences that make us who we are. Here's your host, Carlo Guadagnino.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is DingoTalk, and my guest this week is the head football coach of the Lycoming Warriors, Mike Clark. Coach Clark, very familiar with Lycoming, as he is an alumni there, graduating in 1993. He also coached in 98 and then returned in 2008 to become the head football coach and now also the athletic director at Lycoming. So there's a lot to unpack with Coach Clark. We're going to talk about the landmark. We're going to talk about the invasion of the Warriors into Canada. Obviously, we're going to talk about after the show, after the interview with Coach Clark, we'll talk about Keystone and how that game is going to play out. And then also, we just want everybody to remember these interviews were done pre-season. So a lot of the things you're going to hear are what Coach Clark felt going in, actually right in the heart of camp. If you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on Spotify, really appreciate you being here. Make sure you hit that like button on YouTube, the little notification bell on Spotify. Make sure you follow the social medias. That's Instagram, TikTok, X, and Facebook. The only one that's different is the Instagram page. That's dingo_talk. And don't forget to stick around for the end of the episode. The picks are getting pretty dicey. It was not a good week for some. Actually, I guess it was a good week for everybody. There's only one really big loss on both sides. But I believe the breakdown is 2 points. It's 2 games from the top to the bottom. So make sure you join us for that. And without further ado, this is Coach Clark. What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is Dingo Talk. My guest this week is the head football coach at Lycoming College, Mike Clark. Coach Clark, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome, Carlo. I appreciate the invite.
Coach, I'm happy to have you here. I'm going to do this the same way I do every week. I'm going to put you in our time machine. We're going to take you all the way back to your playing days. We're going to work our way through. So my question for you is, how do you find your way in 1989 to Lycoming?
Well, recruiting was a little bit different then, Carlo, right, than it is now, right? There was no social media, no internet. You basically had the mail, right, your house phone, and, people traveled, right? So a guy named Rob Curry, who ironically is my neighbor now, Rob was Coach Girardi's right-hand man and did a ton of recruiting for Lyco at the time. Rob was originally from Philadelphia, so he prioritized that area. And I was at the time in 1989, 88 season 89. I played in a small all-boys Catholic high school outside of Philadelphia, not far from actually right around the corner from Widener, called St. James. And Rob recruited a lot of guys from down there, and so one of my older brother's friends, Neil McLaughlin, had gone to Lycoming. My freshman year, there was a Ridley guy, which would have been the public high school I would have gone to. Ridley High School. Steve Lentz was a senior O lineman, and ironically, there were some guys at Lycoming that I had played against that when I was in high school, I was pretty sure I didn't like. From Cardinal O'Hara, guy, other Catholic League guys, and so that was different, right? But so Rob did a great job. He recruited me. So did Tom Dottie, who is, Tom is the O-line coach at Widener now, but he had been at Muhlenberg at the time. And so those were really the 2 schools that I chose between at that time. And Muhlenberg was closer to home. Muhlenberg probably ranked higher academically. Maybe a little bit less expensive at the time, but I just got the sense that I related better to the Philadelphia guys. And so, Lyco was a really good fit for me.
Now, why business admin?
I'm sorry, what was that, Carlo? Why what?
Why business admin? Why was your degree?
Well, sure. No, I thought I was going to be an accountant. God was always a guy that I drew up. I always liked the X and O's piece of football, right? Even in high school, I was very in tune to, all right, how are we blocking everybody? You know what I mean? And but I never really thought of football as a career at that point. Like I didn't want to be a teacher. I was decent with numbers, but not great. Ended up taking a couple years of accounting in high school, and Lyco had accounting. So my freshman year, I thought accounting would be really easy. And then the first year of accounting was, I mean, I basically retook 2 years of things that I had in high school, right? 2 semesters. So I was like, this is going to be a breeze. And then intermediate accounting was a different animal. And so that was the next easiest thing. Was not a huge, didn't love history when I was in high school or college. But then there was a requirement here. I actually had 2 semesters of history at Widener in high school that when I dropped intermediate accounting helped me. It kept me on track.
Yeah.
But I had to take a writing class here. And so I took a couple of my buddies are like, take Afro-American history with Dr. Piper. And so I took a history class probably my junior year, and it was awesome. It was the best class I ever had. But at that point, it was too late to become a teacher. So I kind of thought about coaching. Even though I had done an internship at a bank, initially I thought before coaching, I'd get a job, with the Sixers or Eagles or Phillies, right? There was no sports management in those days.
Yeah.
So it was like, all right, I'll go back home. I'll work for them. But then I thought more about maybe coaching. And so I took a job. Actually, I graduated. I took a job at a reform school called Glen Mills, which closed several years ago. Just because they would hire, you didn't have to be a teacher to work at Glen Mills, but it was all court adjudicated high school kids and had athletic teams. Mm-hmm. So I was actually going to coach basketball there in my second year. And that, everybody wanted to coach football there. There were so many former college athletes that worked there that coaching football there was going to be tough. But one of my bosses was the basketball coach. So I was starting to work my way onto the basketball staff when my brother calls me, and my brother's a high school coach, and calls me and says, hey, in the Inquirer today, in the classified ads, they have a GA job at Rowan. So, we applied for a job in the summer, and that was it. So the business thing, I just kind of fell into it. It was an easy transition from accounting. Mm-hmm. That kept me on course to graduate.
And then, so you kind of led into my next question. How was your experience as a GA? You then get your master's at Rowan. I feel like that was a nice little next step.
Yeah, it was cool. Listen, so I think, I worked at Glen Mills, and I just knew that wasn't for me. My brother calls me about this job. So I read it, I apply for it. Next thing you know, they want me to come over and interview. And it was exciting because, essentially Rowan was maybe 30 minutes or so from where I was raised, right? So you had to go over the Commodore Barry Bridge, but it wasn't a long trip. Ran over, met those guys. Rowan had ironically played in the national championship game. So this is summer of '94. Rowan had played in the '93 Stag Bowl. We had played in the Stag Bowl in '90. So I'm like, man, it's going to be just like Lyco. And, so it was exciting. Luckily I was fortunate that Coach Keeler offered me the job. And I took it. Now it wasn't exactly it was a lot different than Lycoming, actually. Big public school as compared to small private school, but had been really successful in football. And so I'm grateful that, KC gave me that opportunity. Jay Accorsi and I, to this day, Rowan's head coach, we remain friends. And that was a really cool experience, a great experience.
And then, so the following year you go, after you finish up at Rowan, you end up dipping your toes in up at the Ivy League. Now, what was that like?
Yeah, that was awesome. So there were certain connections there, right? So Casey Keeler, who's now at Sam Houston State, Casey is a Delaware graduate. Okay. At some point, Don Dobes, who is the defensive coordinator at Dartmouth now, okay. Donnie had been the offensive coordinator at Temple under Jerry Byrne. And so, Donnie was in that area, and the Temple staff got fired. Donnie was living in South Jersey. He had young children, so you need a job. as I recall, I didn't know Donnie at the time, but I'm guessing he didn't want to move. The rowing thing was there. So he goes to rowing like 90, must have been 93-ish, somewhere in that time. So we had some access to Princeton. So 1 year we're at the convention, KC, we go to convention. I want to say it was probably 95, 96. I think must have been January of 96. The convention was in New Orleans. The AFCA used to have it was this big reception, this big party. We go to Superdome. And you're always hustling for your next job. Yep. So Casey introduced me to Donnie. Donnie was a really good guy, very well connected. At the time, Joe Susan, who is now maybe the chief of staff at Rutgers, maybe. Mm-hmm. Joe is back on staff with Greg. Joe had recruited Greg Schiano, so Joe's been at Rutgers twice now. But Joe played at Delaware. Steve Verbit, who's still at Princeton. Steve Verbit's a Delaware guy, right? So there was a little bit of a Delaware connection. Don Dobes, was the connection between Rowan and Princeton. I met those guys that had a tight end job open, and I got a chance to interview for that. In the spring, I was actually still finishing grad school, so they kind of overlapped a little bit, but started at Princeton spring of 90. I guess that was Rowan 94, 95. Yeah, spring of 98 it would have been actually. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So, no.
96.
Spring, 96. I'm sorry. Yeah. Spring of 96. Yep.
So my question, I guess, is, so you're at that point, your playing days and your coaching experience to this point is Division III. What's it like being involved in the Ivy League and being at Princeton?
Awesome. Tremendous, Carlo. I worked with great people like Steve Toshis, whose son Casey now is, I want to say it like Sacred Heart, or I don't know what Casey, but Coach Toshis was great to me. Those places are amazing places. The alumni networks there are phenomenal. Got a chance to coach in, like Palmer Stadium at Princeton before they tore it down.
Yep.
Which was amazing, like just crazy. Got a chance to coach in Carm Koza's last game at Yale. So like they brought out, you play at the Yale Bowl, and Calvin Hill and all the Yale captains, so Grant Hill's dad, right? Like all these, and we played in front of, I want to say 30 or 40,000 people. Now the Yale Bowl is so big that it didn't seem like it was that crowded, but there were a ton of people there. Mm-hmm. Harvard Stadium is awesome. So that was really cool. The second year at Princeton, our stadium, the stadium was torn down because they rebuilt what is now Princeton Stadium on essentially the same land. So we had to play all our games on the road. So we coached, we played Fordham at the College of New Jersey or Trenton State. And we played, who did we play? We played, I want to say maybe it was Yale. We played someone in the Meadowlands. So that was cool, getting a chance to coach a game in the Meadowlands. But Franklin Field, like growing up in suburban Philly and getting a chance to, to coach at Franklin Field. Working in the Ivy League was tremendous. And I love basketball too. So like, even though I was a Division III offensive lineman, I thought when I was younger, I'd be playing basketball for Dean Smith in North Carolina. And that clearly didn't happen. But like 1 year, 98, 99, Carolina was an unbelievable team. Antoine Carter, Antoine Jameson, Vince Carter, Ed Cota, and Princeton was like a fringe top 10 team at the time, and they came to Javelin Gym. So like it was just a lot of really cool experiences. Pete Carrill had just retired as the Princeton basketball coach. So Bill Carmody, John Thompson III, Joe Scott, who is maybe at the University of Denver now, like just some guys that have been high-level Division I basketball coaches. Like you play pickup basketball with those guys. So my time at Princeton, even though it was a long time ago, really cool. Went on a recruiting trip with Coach Toshis and met Ross Tucker one time. Wow. Dean Kane would be back to campus, Jason Garrett. I mean, those guys wouldn't know me, but just interacted. Kyle Brandt, who's on, I think, Good Morning Football now. Mm-hmm. If I had not come back here, I was coaching the running backs when Kyle enrolled at Princeton. So, like, in terms of sports, like what you're doing now, Ross, I still see Ross occasionally. And I haven't talked to Kyle, but yeah, so I mean, just that time at Princeton was really cool.
When I have to ask the question because it's how the show goes, but I think I know the answer to why the next move made sense. It's an O-line job. It's back home. But tell us about it. So how does that come about? And then why was it the right time to take your first stint back at home?
Yeah, so it was, Carlo, it was the summer. I honestly didn't think that I was fully prepared and gracious, thankful that the Princeton coaches were allowing me to come back for a third year, right? Like in those jobs at those time, they're kind of like growth positions, and they want you to be there 2 years, but if you're there a third year, sometimes they don't feel like coaches at that level had done their job in preparing you for a full-time job, right? So, so I was preparing to go back to Princeton, and look, we had a studio apartment. I think I got paid $9,000. Could eat in the dining hall once a day. Yeah, but I was still excited about going back, right? It was still, I worked, I was on staff. Kirk Scirocco was there at the time. Just some great coaches, right? Kirk's the OC at Rutgers now. So I was working with good people. It was a great learning experience. But then Coach Girardi called me in the summer, and Mike Selecchia, who had been the offensive line coach here like 96, 97, Mike was named head coach at Lebanon Valley in the summer of 98.
Okay.
And so Coach Girardi called me and offered me the job. And I was flattered, and it was a really easy look. Probably what I want to say might have been, I don't know, $25,000 at the time, or $30,000. Like, it was way better than $9,000.
Yeah. That math.
Yeah. And so coming back here, it was cool. Like, look, again, I'm a suburban Philadelphia guy. I loved South Jersey, Central Jersey. We're all really good. I was close enough to, friends and family, and coaching in some great environments. But we had been good too, right? So like 96, we're in the Final Four. 97, we lost in the national championship game to Mount Union, and so the opportunity to come back here at a time when we were really good was certainly a great opportunity at that time.
And what was it like getting to coach alongside your head coach when you were playing, and kind of get mentored by Coach Girardi?
Yeah, he's phenomenal. He's still around, Carlo, but back then it was great. And it was really, gosh, when you think about it, like G ended up being here 36 years. But like Steve Weiser was the DC when I played here. Wise was still there in the late 90s. Mike Weber had been one of my coaches, was still on staff. So there were a lot of guys that were on staff. Ironically, Steve is still here as our associate head coach and defensive coordinator now. This will be his 50th year. So yeah, this is going to be why he graduated from here in 74, still coaching here. I mean, just an insane the greatest representation of what our program is or could be. I mean, he's just a great coach and great people person. So like coaching with those guys in the late 90s was great. It was really good.
And then, so you go from running backs and tight ends at Princeton to offensive line back home at Lyco. Then you get the opportunity to go to the big seat on the offense, the OC job at Davidson. And why was that? Was that just chronologically for you? I want to be an OC because the next step is, you want to be an OC before you become a head coach, or was that just an opportunity to move up the ring a little bit?
I think it was a little bit of both, right? I had been at Davidson, a super high-end academic school. And that was a unique time, Carlo. Gosh, I actually interviewed for a couple jobs at the same time there. Like, I had interviewed for a job at Rowan at that time. And then Joe Susan, who I referenced earlier, I worked with Joe at Princeton. Joe got offered the Davidson job in like the spring of 2000. And he called me, offered us the job. So I think it was a little bit of everything. I didn't know a ton about Davidson at the time. I was loosely familiar with it, but was not super informed about it. Again, the distance was a little bit of of a factor. But then honestly, like the interview at Rowan didn't work out. Coach Keeler went a different direction, which happens a lot in our profession, right? There, you lose so many jobs. Like when you go through interviews, there's so many more jobs you don't get than you do.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, I could stay at Lyco, which was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, kind of going to Davidson was the next progression. Joe made me the O-line coach. Joe made me the coordinator. So getting those titles, being at another high-end academic school, you know, I thought was good. You know, at that point there was no end in sight for Coach Girardi, right? And nor should there have been. You know, so it was like it just seemed right. You know, you worry a little bit. I'll never forget when I was leaving here, a good friend of mine is a lacrosse coach at he's now at Stevens, Gene Peluso, and when I was leaving, he's like, you're moving around too much. People are going to look at your resume and think that, you know, you just jump from job to job. Well, I didn't necessarily see it that way at that time. You know, like the first job at Rowan, I got my master's. It was time to move on, right? The Princeton thing, I was planning on going back before I came back to my alma mater, and it was really hard to leave here in 2000. It was. But it just, you know, so for all the reasons you stated, sometimes it's the next step, new opportunities, working with different people, all of those things. You know, we felt it was okay for us to do. You know, Joe, my wife will tell you that, like, Joe Susan sent my wife flowers, right, to try to, you know, so Joe hired me. Joe hired my buddy Mead Clendaniel, who's I think the safeties coach right now, special teams coordinator at Lafayette, excellent football coach, great person. So Mead had worked at Princeton after me. So like, you know, he was trying to get us to go with him. And I talked to some people about it. You know, you always use your, you know, connections or resources to discuss those things with people. And so we made the jump.
Now, though, for the 7 years that you're at Davidson, how did those prepare you for the next step, which is replacing your head coach or moving into the position that your former head coach had? And why was it time to come home?
Cool. So I don't know, honestly, Carlo, like, I don't know that you're ever really prepared to be a head coach anyway, right? Like, I've heard people say that. I think it's true. I mean, you do get older, you do get more mature, but certainly the issues and problems change. You know, at Davidson, ironically, I worked for 3 different head coaches in those 8 seasons. You know, so Joe was there for a year. We went 10-0. And then that's the first time Greg Schiano got the Rutgers job. And so Joe went to Rutgers as the O-line coach. And I had a pregnant wife and a down payment on a house. And I thought we were going to get fired, and we were just 10-0. Mike Toop, another unbelievable coach, mentor of mine. Tooper had been he just retired recently from the Merchant Marine Academy. But like, he had been at Penn. I knew him from his time at Penn. We'd worked some camps together. So he kept us all and was a really good mentor. And then I worked for another guy who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. Trip Merritt had been to Davidson, DC under Tim Landis, and had been around, and you know, Trip had been at some great places. He's come back and he kept us, right? So it'd been 8 years. It had been, you know, ironically, the Albright job the year before was open and didn't really excite me. And that's not a slight on Albright. I didn't think I was ready to be a head coach, right? I really didn't. So when our job opened, it was scary, but just different, you know, like it's a great place. And so I don't know, I wasn't young at that time, right? I was probably, when I'm 52, so I was 36, 37 around that time, coming back here beginning of 08. So I was going on 37 years old. You know, we had kids. We'd been away from our families. Both of our families are suburban Philadelphia. Our kids didn't see their grandparents a ton. Not that being 3 hours now is easy, but it's, you know, it's better than manageable. 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'd be playing in the Philadelphia area more. As cool as Davidson was, you know, man, you know, you got to go to Florida, California, right? I knew who Steph Curry was before most other people, right?
Yeah.
That was really cool. And I'm like, this kid, he's good in the Southern Conference, but he's not going to be
like, you know, everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody was, no, man, you're a hell of a basketball player, but the height thing is gonna get you. Well,
yeah, well, especially what we do, right? So look, I had some awesome. It's funny, last 2 weeks, I got a FaceTime from Kirk Benedict, who's at Georgia now, and as the special teams coordinator, played for us at Davidson. He was with Ryan Arnold, who I had recruited. Ryan married Kirk's sister. They were on vacation together down in Florida. They called me. So, like, Davidson was great too, And look, I was emotional. I cried when I told the kids I was leaving Davidson, right? Because even though I'm a little bit, hard on the outside, right? Have a really hard shell. Like you work with people, you spend time with people, you create really good memories. So it was tough leaving there, but just the opportunity to come back here was so incredibly unique that when it was presented to me, and it wasn't a slam dunk, right? I had to interview. I mean, there were some things that, had to go and earn it. And when it worked out, it was just, I don't want to say a dream come true, but it's really good. It's been an honor.
Now, Coach, as an alumni,
yep.
Do you put a little bit more pressure on yourself, being that you're the head coach of your alma mater?
I think so. And honestly, Carlo, look, my first 8 years, we were better than the last 6 or 7, right? I mean, that's to be very direct. Look, it's a crazy world out there. It's really challenging. I don't want to make excuses, right? But I thought that we could be good. And in our first year, we won a championship, largely with really good guys and players that Coach Girardi left us. A couple of them are in coaching now. Pat Taylor's the O-line coach at Kutztown. Andy Marino is the head high school coach at Whitehall High School in Allentown, but he had been the O-line coach at Harvard and Lehigh and Elon. Tremendous football guys. We were pretty good on defense. Coach Weiser was still here and did an awesome job. So, we fell into a championship then, not so great in 2009, but then had a pretty good run through 2014. But then our best year recently is 2021, So, but yeah, there's pressure. And I'm glad, I know this. So even my friends, right? I'm in a text thread with some of my friends, a lot of our alums, and most of the time, I'll just say this, they're very honest. And they're not afraid to tell you when it's not good enough. And last year clearly wasn't. A couple years before that, we're not. But you're good when you work at a place, and when you're 8-3, they tell you it's not good enough.
Yeah.
And I would much rather coach at a place where people care about what you do and tell you when it's not good enough, as compared to working at a place where nobody notices or nobody cares.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So, Coach, put us in the room with you and a potential recruit's family. What are you looking at? What's the conversation like? What is the Lyco program about?
Okay. So I mean, first of all, Carlo, obviously we would have seen some academic information and evaluated some film ideally, right? Okay. But for me, when we have guys come to campus, and I do think our place is a nice place, right? Now we are a little bit, so we're kind of 3 hours from everybody, right? You're 3 hours from Northern New Jersey, 3 hours from Philly, 3 hours from Baltimore, right? So you got some people that travel. But what I want to talk to people about is, first and foremost, I think there's 4 things that really that I try to talk to recruits about, and I'll get to those in a second. But I really think it's important that I challenge guys initially to think about what they think they want to get out of going to college, right? If you think about it, there's more than 2,800 four-year colleges in America. They don't all have football, but at the end of the day, you need to think about what you want, so you can assess every school that's recruiting you as to how they meet those needs. Now, your thought process may change, or what you think you're interested in may change as you go through it, right? But do I want a big school? Do I want a small school? Do I think I have an understanding of a major, right? Because I think that at least allows you to, get to your visits, okay?
Yeah.
Plan your visits. So you think about, hey, how important is level of play? Money's always important, right? So everybody's concerned about money. And I think we're very competitive from a financial aid standpoint. So for me, I want to know that students first and foremost are committed students, right? So I'm going to expect your best academically. So we'll always talk about the quality of education here. We were 5 years ago, the 165th ranked liberal arts college in the country. We're up to 111th. Our students get good jobs, right? We have a strong alumni network, even though we're a small school of 1,200 students. People that have gone here are really passionate about it. And so I think we get good outcomes. Okay. And I think that's important, whether or not you want to think about it this way. Now, you are going to college, like, you know, to get an education and to get prepared for what's going to happen after college. And so I think that part is kind of where I always start, right? Yeah. But students change majors. I did. Adults change careers, right? So you know, right? And but if you're a creative thinker, if you're a problem solver, if you have good interpersonal skills, then you're going to have opportunities to have different jobs and careers. You can't be a doctor if you don't go to med school. Right? That's true. You got to pass the bar to be a lawyer, right? But even to be a teacher, you could teach at a private school and don't need your teaching cert, right? So I think there are, you know, I coached at Princeton and Davidson. They never had business majors. There's a lot of really successful Princeton and Davidson people that work in the business world, right? So I think getting a great education matters. I think we offer that. 5 straight years now, we're ranked in the Princeton Review's top 385 schools in the country. Again, our job placement rates are great. So I think that part is good, okay? I always want to talk to families about, like, I think you want to go to a place that's nice institutionally. We've done a very good job of investing in our facilities, right? Yep. So, you know, we leaving the MAC, going to the Landmark. I've not been everywhere, but like in the MAC, Stevenson had the best stadium. After that, I would argue that our stadium was the next closest, and that collectively our facilities, you know, our stadium, our weight room is excellent, but like across campus, our president has renovated in his 10 years, multiple dormitories, tons of classroom space. We built a new music building. We built a new physics and astronomy building, right? Like so I think you've seen an investment in facilities, like for a small school in a time in higher ed where it's Alderson Brothers is closing, Cabrini just closed, right? Like higher ed is a really challenging field. Yeah. Our enrollment has slipped a little bit, not a ton, but we have a $200+ million endowment. So our financial strength is great. And we're able to improve the physical infrastructure of our campus when other schools are maybe not able to do so, right? It's a really, really tough time. So I think our campus shows really well. Nice place. We're going to talk about football, right, Carlo? Like if you're going to visit, you're a football player, we're football coaches, you're going to hang out with our football players. But, you know, while I'm not proud of last year, our history and our tradition arguably is amongst the best in all of Division III football. So while not, you know, Mount Union, you know, we've played in the Stagville. We were the only MAC school, you know, since Widener won the national championship in 1981. Lycoming's the only other school to play in the national championship game in the 90s and forward. Our 15 MAC championships still ranks high up there. We've had 70+ Division III All-Americans. We've had 2 head coaches in the last 52 seasons or something like that. You and the Steelers, you're the only 2 that we and I know I know you're a Philly guy, but I had to, you know. No, that's okay. Listen, I don't want to say I'm neutral. I have some Steelers friends that are Steelers fans, and Coach Weiser, our DC, is a huge Steelers fan, right? So that I get, but like longevity matters here. A lot of our people stay here. I mean, we've had 2 wrestling coaches in that same time frame. Wow. Our last 2 presidents, we've had 2 presidents at Lyco since 1989. The average lifespan for our college presidents like 6-7 years, and we've had 2 since, you know, the last 34 years, right? So I just think there are things inherently about our institution that people stay. And that would bring me to my last point. So that, you know, it's the campus and the facilities, it's the football history, traditions, the quality academics. But lastly, no one's going to, I love our people, right? Like, I just think we've got really, really good people at our place that allows us to attract more good people. And if you like the quality of, you know, like if you get along and you relate well to the people that you meet on your visit, then I think that there's a really good chance that you'll feel comfortable and stay at our place. And so I would put our people up against anybody. Now, no one's going to tell you in recruiting, hey, our kids stink or are terrible people. But, but I do, again, like our DC's been here since 1970, yep. Right? So I just think there are some things that it's a great area. It's not Philly. It's not New York. It's a small town, and but it's a really good place. And so I think all of those things collectively, are reasons you should look at us. If you want to go to a big school, we're not it. If you have to be a scholarship player, then we're not it. But like I always tell guys, you can type your commitment graphic right now, right? So I don't care where you're going, right? So but if you're a Division II, Division III guy, you could put, want to thank my family and coaches or whatever. I'm blessed to announce that I'm committing to blank school, okay? And you won't get any more likes, favorites, retweets, or whatever we call stuff on Twitter now, because of the school name. Then you will, you could pick Westchester or you could pick Lycoming. And the people who care most about you are going to be happy that you found a place for you to continue your playing career. That's what they're going to be happy about. So your social media traffic's not going to matter. Now, if you can commit to Penn State, massive fan base, totally different thing. But in general, so I just bring it back that way. What do you really want, and what school best meets your needs? Because it's not going to matter, right? At the end of the day, this process is about these guys finding the best place for them to take the next step in their life. And we're not right for everybody, but rarely do the guys that come here and stay here regret being here, right? We had our golf outing 2 Fridays ago, right? We're lucky there's a public course not far from here that has 2 courses, Carlo. We had 288 golfers. We had every hole doubled up on both courses.
That's a heck of a day.
Right. We made a lot of money. Not everyone was an alum. The local community also really supports us, but we had a great number of our alums who come to that. And Coach Weiser does an awesome job. Coach Girardi comes back. We've had guys here from the 70s, 80s, 90s. 5+ decades that played in our golf. Really cool. Yeah.
Coach, do you have any difficulties being the football coach and the athletic director? Is there ever a conflict or anything that come up?
I don't think there's necessarily a conflict of interest, but are there challenges? For sure. When they first asked me to do it, Carlo, it's funny. I talked to some different people. This goes back to our prior president, and I talked to some people about it. If you really want to laugh, so a guy named Scott Kennel had been our AD, who is actually back as the athletic director at Penn College now, but Scott left in the summer of 13, or was it 11? Must have been 11. He goes over to Penn College to be the AD. I wanted no parts of being the athletic director, Carlo. None. This is true. You're going to laugh. So at the time, one of my offensive coaches was a guy named Chris Monfoletta. Okay. Chris was a captain for us at Davidson. He had moved here. He was essentially at the time our offensive coordinator, unbelievable coach, recruited some great players for us. Okay. So Chris says to me, because we were probably paying him who knows how much money at the time, not much. He says, "Do you mind if I apply to be the athletic director?" And I'm like, because it's a stipended position, right? And I'm like, "Nah, I don't care. So go ahead." So long story short, our president at the time and another woman named Sue Gaylor, or Sue Stubner, who's the president now at Kobe Sawyer, great person, really. She calls me. I was going to work the Princeton camp. She's like, "Hey, I want your thoughts on the athletic director search. You're the football coach. So we're talking, and there was someone who I thought could have done it. I'm not sure if he really wanted it, but another coach that they didn't hire. And she says, "Well," I said, "but honestly, otherwise, I think Chris would do a good job." And she's like, "Mike, he really impressed people, but now he's a Hun school. I don't know if you know Princeton. There's a private school there called Hun School. Amazing high school, right?" Okay. He's a Davidson grad, so he's super sharp, very polished, incredibly successful. He's at Colorado State now, but then he went on to be the head coach. So he became our AD for 6 months, and then he became the head coach at Kenyon. So for a while, I was the football coach, and one of my assistant coaches was my boss. It was crazy.
Makes for an interesting staff meeting.
It was good. It's just I didn't step on his toes administratively, and I was in charge for football. So he's a great guy. but but then they asked me to do it, and I just felt at the time I would figure it out. But honestly, my biggest goal at that time was like, okay, I don't want football to get worse. And, so this is January of 12. And so we hung in there 12, 13, 14. But honestly, since then, we've not been as good, which I think part of that is recruiting. And part of it is, sometimes I'm absolutely stretched thin. And so, there are absolutely challenges. I'm excited. We had a little bit of a staff change before, and I just hired a new OC named Greg Roskus, who had been the OC at Cortland for a while, for like 12 years. Excellent coach. So that's going to take a big chunk kind of off my plate, but it absolutely presents challenges at times and can be difficult.
I would assume that with all the sports that you have to manage on top of being the guy that is the coach for a specific sport.
I'm lucky. Let me say this. I plugged a lot of people, not that I'm doing plugs, but like our associate AD, Joe Gastina, he's our sports information director. Amazing. My administrative assistant, Tara Miller, like those. So I just have to kind of like deal with problems a lot of times. Yeah. But so, I mean, and no, we're all only as good, regardless of what you're doing, is like the people that help us or surround us. And so I'm fortunate that, I think Joe's amazing. Tara's really good. We have some awesome head coaches who you don't have to babysit, like our wrestling coach, Roger Krebs. He's in the Wrestling Hall of Fame. Like our soccer coaches are both really good. Right. So I don't want to exclude anybody, but that makes it easier to do.
Makes sense. So Coach, I want to, let's review really quick. Just, you talked about the 2022 season.
Yeah.
And then we'll jump in because I think you guys have had a very interesting 2023. You took a trip to Canada. You're in a new conference. There's a lot going on. So let's talk about 22. What was, 4-6? What was the, what happened last year?
So we had a really good year in 21. And then we graduated 5 of the top 6 wide receivers, 4 senior O linemen, an all conference tight end broke his wrist and needed surgery and missed the year. The top 2 tailbacks transferred after the 21 season. And so we were really young on offense last year. And honestly, Carlo, we probably should have been at least 6-4. And could have been 7-3, right? And I'm not, and look, Kings had a great year last year. Quite honestly, I don't know if this is the best compliment I can pay them, but Kings last year reminded me of us in 21. They were tough, they were physical, but we missed multiple field goals in a game we lost by 5 points. We threw an interception in the end zone, and we allowed 3 touchdown passes of more than 50 yards, right? Like. And I think we sacked them 5 times and maybe forced, I don't know how many turnovers that game, but we played, other than the long touchdown passes, we played well enough defensively to win. And if we would have just, don't throw the interception in the end zone, make a couple field goals, don't allow one, we should have won that game. And early in the year, I think that had an impact on us, right? Because it was very early last year. But then Kings goes on and has a really good year, right? I think 1-8 game. Misericordia late in the year, I give John a lot of credit there. He's newer. He's worked really, really hard. But like we offensively turned the ball over again several times. And we threw a screen that got batted in the air, and they returned it and 90+ yards for a touchdown. Like we missed a couple field goals. So we defensively in that game, I thought we played. So we just really struggled offensively last year. I loved our quarterback Elijah Shamori, but 21, he was awesome. Last year, we put a lot on him, and we weren't fast, and we were inexperienced. And so that was really challenging last year. Even Stevenson, Ed does a great job. Ed Hoddle there does a nice job. Good program. Our quarterback was injured, and we were trying not to play him against Stevenson. He was cleared, but it was like, we didn't think it was the right thing to do. So we were winning 3-0 at halftime, 10-0 the beginning of the third quarter. We score, but then they score, and then we turned it over, and they score to take the lead. Then we change quarterbacks, and we throw an interception, and they score again. And then then we turned it, like, we just turned it over. Honestly, Carlo, like in that game, I want to say, like, I think we throw 3 interceptions in 4 snaps, and then we fumble a kickoff return, and then we have a penalty on a 50-yard touchdown pass after that. So, like, defensively, we were pretty good that game too. So we were in every game, but we really struggled on offense. And that was, I coach on the offensive side of the ball, right? I'm not pointing fingers, right? Ultimately, I was calling the plays last year. That's my responsibility, but we were just not as athletic and fast, and certainly inexperienced. And I think that combination made it a really, really challenging year for us on offense last year.
Well, so then moving forward, now that was your guys' last year in the MAC. You're now moving over, joining Susquehanna, you guys, and is it Lebanon Valley that's also going?
So Susquehanna, Moravian, and Juniata are all leaving this intent. Well, so they've been in the Landmark for other sports, but the Landmark never sponsored football. So Susquehanna, Juniata, Moravian were all full Landmark members, but played football in the Centennial. Catholic has also been in the Landmark, but they haven't had football, right? So the Catholic was playing up in New England. They asked us and Wilkes to join. So us and Wilkes are leaving the MAC. And then so that puts the full conference at 10 schools with 6 football schools. And then Keystone has joined the Landmark as a football affiliate member.
And that gives you guys, it's an automatic bid, right? As an existing conference, the 6 members, 7 with the affiliate, that gives you guys the automatic bid.
Yeah, and so that was kind of the genesis of the whole thing, Carlo, but it also complicated it a little bit, right? Because there was pending NCAA legislation, right? So we weren't going to make the move if there wasn't a football AQ attached to it, right? That's just, we would not have done that. So we were a little more diligent and quiet about the process, I think, but somehow, just anyway, people found out, right? Like that other schools might have been involved in conversations, and then people start asking. And so it was a little bit of a delicate situation, but so we have 6 as the AQ. Had Wilkes and us stayed in the MAC, the MAC actually would have gone to the MAC would have, as it's currently structured, the MAC is 18 schools, or was at the time. And if you look at other sports in the MAC, there's the MAC Commonwealth and the MAC Freedom. Yeah. And they have 2 AQs for the majority of their other sports, basketball, baseball, softball, lacrosse. Well, the way it was structured with Eastern starting football this year, the MAC would have actually had 2 6-team divisions, and the MAC would have gotten the second AQ. So really, Wilkes were able to determine kind of where that, or our presidents were able to determine where that AQ was going to go, because ultimately changing athletic conferences was a presidential decision. And then on top of joining a new conference, you guys, and I have it written here as the Canadian Invasion, because I saw how that game played out. It seemed like you guys had a great trip up there. So talk to us a little bit about that. Yeah, we did it in 2017, Carlo. Albright used to do it in our league. I know Utica had done it. So as we tried to go in 2017, I talked to Blaise Fagiano at Utica, kind of gave me the recipe for how to do it. And so we did it in 17. We were supposed to go back in 2020, but couldn't do anything in 2020, right? So we finally got to the point where vaccination statuses didn't really matter. And so we've been sitting on this for a while. To me, there's 2 different unbelievable experience. For a couple of reasons. Number one, you get actual practice time to prepare to go out of the country. So if you take advantage of the NCAA's foreign tour exception, you can do it every 3 years. You have to play the game, and this is every sport, but on like a break period. So, we have in the fall, we have fall break. It's 1 day. But several years ago, our basketball coach used that prior to the October 15th start date to go to Canada, and because he got practice time ahead of that. So, it's a little trickier in football, right? You certainly wouldn't want to go into summer. You don't want to go right after the season. So, maybe spring break, which would mimic practice. For us, it became May because, listen, I mean, Muhlenberg's been to Spain and Italy. I'd love to do that, but I think you exclude kids when you do that. And I'm not judging them. I'd love to go to Spain. I'd love to go to Italy. But we're able to do the Canada thing for probably $700-800 a kid. And that includes the food when you're here practicing and all of that. So you're allowed 10 days of practice before you go. Mm-hmm. And it's I don't want to say there's no rules because we practice smartly, but like D3 spring football now, you're not allowed to line up 11 versus 11. You can wear shoulder pads for 4 days. And despite what I see on recruits' timelines on Twitter of people clearly lining up 11 versus 11, I'm not going to do any names, but if you guys know who you are, you're not allowed to do that, right? It is illegal. And for me, that's a little bit of a sticking point because, look, I get it. I'd love to teach our game. I think we're restricted at the D3 level in how they let us teach. It pales in comparison to the Division I and Division II guys. But you can't just openly break the rules. And so that, but it happens now. You know what I mean? Like
those timelines are a thing, man. They don't realize everybody's watching them.
Yeah, like the kid didn't say, hey, can you guys act like you're lining up 11 versus 11 so I can take this picture, right? And I don't, I mean, come on, right? So, but as the AD, it's like, well, how can you just can't do it, right? So it's not worth it. And you are allowed to do some one-on-one stuff in those scenarios, so that's good. But knowing that we had the padded practices coming up, man, it was awesome. So you keep your kids for a week after finals end. We had a really good 8 straight days. We didn't practice 8 straight days, but we got good work in. Not 8 heavy days, but then we sent our kids home for a couple of days, and then they came back because you got to feed them, right? And so feeding 70 people for 2 weeks so we did it for 8 days. Sent our kids home on a Saturday. They came back on Thursday. We finally talked about how we were going to play with 12 people because the rules are a little bit different. The field's a lot bigger. Went up to Watertown, New York that night, but we were in Montreal before noon on Friday, had some tour guides, had like 4 or 5 sets of tour guides, did a 2-hour tour of the historical part of Montreal. Honestly, Friday night, we give our kids that night, right? In season, I would never tell the kids, hey, go do whatever you want on a Friday. But the drinking age in Canada is 18. And you can't we weren't playing till Sunday. So we basically took the kids into a really popular part of the city, a little like 6:30, closer to 7. I'm like, okay, here's the deal, guys. Like, here is money for dinner tonight, lunch tomorrow, and dinner tomorrow night. I said, be on the bus at midnight and don't get arrested. And the kids, honestly, I mean, they loved it. Friday was really cool. No football stuff. Wake up the next day. We actually the next day did our final practice at McGill University, which is where the Montreal Alouettes play at their stadium, Molson Stadium. So that was cool. Yeah. Then we played Sunday and came back. The ride back is the worst part, but the whole experience, the experience in the city, the extra practice time, I mean, all of that stuff I think is just an opportunity for us to provide our kids. Something that a lot of our kids maybe maybe never go out of the country otherwise. Yeah. And we were able to take, I think we had a handful of kids that didn't go, 5, but honestly, most of our returners went.
Coach, what's the importance of Division III? You were talking about, right before we started that answer, you were talking about, Division III kind of doesn't get what D2, D1 get in the same, I think D3 gets called a glorified intramural sport, and that shows me that people haven't seen these D3 games because it's not. So what's D3 mean to you?
Just opportunity, right? And not opportunity in that like anybody can play or is a club sport, but opportunity for really good players who want a chance to go on and play. Listen, the numbers, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, you can make it to the NFL from D3. Yes, you can. Okay. Like there's a handful of those guys, like Ali Marpet is a Hobart kid. Right. And I talked to him, I remember years ago, I talked to him on the phone once. He would never remember this either, but like Sam Mills, obviously, right, played in the NFL, right, and Mount Union has had guys. I mean, it happens. Okay. But honestly, Carlo, it's 7% of high school kids go on to play college sports, and not everyone can be a Division I guy. And so if you love your sports, football or whatever it is, and you want to continue to play it, and you want to get a good education, and you want athletics to be part of your college experience, then D3 is unbelievable, right? Like, I don't know. So I think of Pennsylvania, okay, and not that you have to go to school in your home state, but like in PA, all the D2 schools are state schools for the most part.
Yep.
Right. So, not Mercyhurst, and I think Gannon maybe is a private school, but there's, Bloom, Westchester, Cal, Slippery Rock. I mean, they're all big state schools. But what if a kid doesn't want that? So, I have a lot of friends that coach in the PSAC, and they're great places and good people, but like some kids want to play at the highest level of play, and you get offered to go to those places, you should, right? Yeah. Awesome. But, if you want a different type of education, something a little smaller, more personal, and that's not all schools, not all D3 schools, but but if you love your sport and you still want to play, and you find a school that you love that offers it, what's wrong with that, right? Yeah. And our kids and Division III student athletes everywhere, they invest a ton. I mean, when you look at the people that coach at this level, I've worked at Princeton, I've worked at Davidson, you look at coaches in our league that have coached at great places, that we want to run and structure our programs and give them the same type of experience that coaches at the Division I and Division II level give their kids. And so I think we can provide that experience, So I just, for the people who say, oh, it's D3, I mean, quite honestly, Carlo, those guys never did anything competitive in their life, right? Like if you say, oh, I can't, if you're not playing D1, it's a joke. Wow. Yeah, I'd love to see some of those guys try to line up against some of the people we've played, in the PSAC, like small college football, small college athletics. There's still some amazingly talented kids that bigger schools might think are a step small or a little slow. And honestly, with the whole transfer portal issue, I think there are more good high school players available, even though football numbers, fewer and fewer kids play football. Yeah. The transfer piece, I think, is complicating things at the top, and there are fewer Division I opportunities for high school kids than there used to be. I think.
I agree. I think I've had conversations with other coaches. I didn't necessarily bring up the transfer portal for this specific episode, but I've talked to other coaches about it, and I think that's the conversation that you're having is, there's less spots at the top, so it starts to spill down, and that guy that might have been on the fringe of a 1 now is at a 2, which means the guy that was a fringe 2 is now going to lose his spot down to a 3. And it's not losing the spot, but it is now, it is a trickle-down effect. I mean, it's just what it is.
For sure. We have a couple, listen, every year you think you steal some guys, but we have multiple guys on our roster that have had roster opportunities. I don't know how much scholarship money, but like we started 2 freshman linemen some last year that visited multiple PSAC schools. We have my son could have played had a roster spot at Kutztown, and thankfully chose to come here, for just really for my family's sake, right? We have an incoming freshman, like I said, freshman running back who had a great PSAC visit, a D lineman that turned down 2 scholarship opportunities, but it comes back to what I said is a fit, right? And so, Carlo, like at the end of the day, I mean, look, I don't have $2,000 in my pocket right now, but if I did, is a $2,000 offer from a PSAC school, it's not life changing, and that's not to knock it, right? It's just, but if you don't like the place, that $2,000 is meaningless, right?
Absolutely.
So I think for Division III guys, you got to figure out, or Division II, hey, not everybody likes us. That's fine, but don't go to a place just because someone gives you a little bit of money if you don't like anything else.
It's the other big statement that's come out of that question is volunteers, not hostages. D3, you're there because you want to be there. You're not there because somebody's holding a financial agreement behind you saying, hey, you need to be, and that's not a knock on it. Again, you can get money to go to school, get money, go to school, do that. But remember that there are things that come with that as well. If you sign an obligation, you have an obligation now that you have a commitment.
Yeah, no, the Division I level is, look, unbelievably talented kids, phenomenal opportunities. My son's best friend is home this week for the first time. He's a Division I baseball player. Okay. Mm-hmm. They had a nice year. He as a freshman did okay. And as soon as their season ended, he was told, you're going to this place to report to play for this team in a summer league in a different state further away from home. And now he's home for 2 weeks before he goes back.
Yep.
And that's all summer. I have friends that work at the FCS level that are not, like Carlo, it's not Penn State. I mean, it's not Power 5 football. And their whole team is there in the summer. Like it's there are advantages, right? You're not paying for school. You can take a class. You can make your academic workload more evenly balanced. But you're the expectation at the full scholarship. Like you say, I'm not sure it's a choice. You're right.
Now, Coach, this is my favorite part of the show. These are just random questions. They have nothing to do with football. They're just for us to get to know you.
Yeah.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
So a couple of years ago, I might have said San Diego because I was there once before and it's beautiful and there's no humidity. Honestly, I'm gonna go very random here. We vacation there every summer. Like I don't know, man, the New Jersey, Ocean City, New Jersey, just like at the shore, it's not Florida, but it's close enough to family and friends. Mm-hmm. You get some beaches, you get some sand, and I don't need a lot, you know what I mean? But I love when we go down there, you don't have a whole lot to do. And you just, summertime at the shore in New Jersey, I'm good.
What's the most important lesson that you've learned over your career?
I would say, well, you certainly have to surround yourself with great people, right? Mm-hmm. But what I would also say is because the people are going to make you, but you also need to be prepared, like for when, and in coaching, especially or in life, like you never know when your next opportunity may come along. Like even if you're not looking for it, if it does present itself, then I think it's really important to be prepared and well-versed in some of the topics and current trends in your industry, right? I had some opportunities along the way from an O-line standpoint to interview for some pretty good O-line jobs. I was gracious enough to get the interviews, but never really got those jobs. And when I asked one guy in particular for feedback, he said, hey, I thought that you can be better here and here. And it wasn't that what I taught poorly. It's just that he thought there were better ways to teach some of this. So I would say to just, listen, part of learning, here goes another one. This is because I've worked for a lot of people. I think sometimes learning is you look at things and you say, I'm absolutely going to do that. Other times you work with people or you're surrounded by people who do things a certain way and you say, hey, I'm never going to do that. Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah, those types of things.
Makes sense. Coach, if you weren't coaching, what would you be doing?
If I wasn't coaching, what would I be doing? I wish I could tell you I was a professional golfer, but I'm a terrible golfer. I like playing, but I stink.
I like to believe I'm a professional fisher, and I don't catch much, but I enjoy being out there.
Yeah. Man, if I wasn't coaching, I don't know. I don't know if I want to be in an office all day. Maybe some kind of sales sounds kind of boring, but something where you move around, something where you can still interact with people, something where you can, just it's not the same thing all the time. And I think that's what's cool about coaching is you get a week and you have to get a new opponent, but then then it's recruiting season, then it's getting ready for spring ball. It's never the same. Mm-hmm. So something that if it was sales, something where you're traveling, you're meeting new people, you're interacting with people on a regular basis.
Where did you meet your wife?
McDonald's. We both worked at McDonald's. So we worked at two separate stores, and we ran out of something at the store I was at, and I had to go to. So I was working at the McDonald's in Ridley Township. I had to go pick something up at the Clifton Heights McDonald's. I knew the guy that ran the store. This guy Dave Cashwell. So I noticed Danielle. I'm like, hey, who's that? And got her number. Asked her out. She was older than me. I was 20. She was 21. Borrowed my brother's driver's license so we could go to the Red Lantern for our first date. So I had to use my brother's ID to get into the bar.
Now that's a story that most people don't get to share right there. That's a good one.
That's true. No, and it's, that's a long time ago. So, can't get in trouble for it now.
What's the best compliment you've ever received?
Yeah, that's a good one. All right. Listen, you always get, not always, but it's nice when you get feedback from former players. But I distinctly remember, I had to think about this, but when we won the MAC championship in 2008, Coach Girardi hugged me and told me he was proud of me. It was a rough first year for a number of reasons, Carlo. I didn't want to bring any of that up, but it was a little challenging, the transition, for some legitimate reasons, right? You know what I mean? And so that was really cool. Like when we were successful and were able to win a MAC championship, and to hear him say that was really, and he was supportive from the beginning. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I don't want him, but it was, so that was awesome when he said that to me. And
then on the other side of compliments, what's the best insult you've ever received?
Well, listen, I wasn't happy about this because it was after I have a giant head, so my friends always give me a hard time, but I think that's playful. But I did have someone after one game tell me, I hope your house is already for sale. So that was I reacted okay, but as calmly as I could in that environment. And then our team doctor said, hey, listen, let's come with me. But that, again, what we do is very
emotional,
and fans are passionate and parents are passionate. And so I think before the team doctor pulled me aside, I offered that person the opportunity to come to work with us for a week and evaluate how hard we work. He said, I'll email you. And of course he never did, but
well, that's how that goes, right?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, Coach. So this is the last question. I've asked everybody this question this season. Was there a question you were expecting me to ask you? And if so, how would you have answered it?
Wow. Was there a question well, okay. So, I guess I would have, we talked about last year and the leading up to this year. I guess I would have thought you would ask, hey, what are your expectations, or what do you think about the team for this year? Right?
It was coming because I got September 2nd with Widener. It was gonna be my last slide in, but you got me there. I did wait a little long.
Okay. I'm cautiously optimistic. Our non-conference schedule is difficult, right? Changing conferences, my biggest concern was our Widener rivalry is a really good small college rivalry. And if you go through the years, there have been some unbelievable games at different times. And, I've won some heartbreakers. Our staff, I should say, lost some. Coach Girardi's team won some classic games. Coach against some unbelievable guys like Bill Zwan and Bill Cubitt, and Bill Manlove is a legend who won those national championships. So that's a great. I was really happy we could keep that week one game. Then you get like Cortland, Utica, Brockport non-conference in some capacity. They're all really good. But I hope that I still think we'll be good defensively. I think our skill is a year older or a year more mature, and so we're cautiously optimistic about this year. Susquehanna coming into this year, easily to say that they're the best team in the landmark, right? They just won the Centennial. Tom has done an unbelievable job there. But I just hope as we grow, you don't get to if we can stay healthy, even though we have to gain some experience. You have less conference games early in the year, so we're not starting conference play now to our fifth game, and so it might create a different dynamic later in the year where you remain in contention. So I'm I guess I would say look, I'm not gonna. You can't sit here and say, "Oh, we're gonna win the landmark." You know what I mean? But like, but that's a goal. I mean, that's certainly a goal for us. So, we're gonna have to weather the storm early, but we'll be ready. I mean, I've told this to recruits, like, no one's playing a better schedule than us, right? Like,
No.
we were doing a joint practice with Ithaca. Widener is historically strong. Cortland's really good. Utica beat Susquehanna, right?
Yep.
Brockport's legit.
Mhm.
Wilkes beat out. I mean, and then you get Susquehanna late in the year. I mean, we're going to be on the field with 7 really, really good Division III football teams.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Coach, I want to wish you the best of luck this season, and hopefully next season we're sitting here at the same time, shooting the breeze, talking about how the 23 season went and what our expectations are for 24. For those of you sticking around, you know what comes next. It's Overtime with Serenity Brown. I believe this is one of the weeks that we're going to be introing where my fiance, who does not know anything about football, I'm going to give her a list of football games. I'm going to let her pick them. We're going to see what she picks, who the winners are. So I don't know how that's going to go. We're going to find out together. But please stick around. This has been Coach Mike Clark of Lycoming College. And like I said, we'll be right back.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. Welcome back. This is the OT Pick'em with Serenity Brown. That's that person right there. Hi, Serenity. How are you?
Right.
Figured I should say hello.
Tired.
Figure I should say hello to you, you know. We just kind of jump right in. So, hi. Sorry that you're tired. We'll make this quick. So we just finished up with Coach Clark from Lycoming. My thoughts on it are it's always cool when we get somebody who went to school at the place they're now coaching. On top of that, he also kind of gets to be his own boss a little bit as the athletic director as well. The Canadian story was cool, them getting to travel to Canada and actually him explaining to us like how that works in the NCAA. And then the move over to the landmark. It's a big shakeup in the College 3 or Division 3 college conference world. But we're not here to talk any more about that before we get into our picks. If you're watching us on YouTube and listening to us on Spotify, really appreciate it. If you want to, and you would be so inclined, you can follow us on the social medias. That's TikTok, Instagram, X, and Facebook. The only one that's different is the Instagram page. That's dingo_talk. But let's jump into the picks. I believe I said in the intro we're separated by 2 games. You were pointing out to me we're separated by 3 games total from top to bottom. Mm-hmm. DB is at the top.
At the bottom.
You and I are separated by a game. DB and I are separated by a game. So this week there's some opportunity, not much, as we picked pretty close on. So first game of the week, they're staying on the.
Can I say this real quick? Because I don't want anyone to think I pick my choices based on what you and DB pick. So I want to say that all of my picks get put in first before Carlo or DB put in their picks.
That is factual, 100% factual.
Just wanted to.
A couple teams on the board that will continue to be on the board until they lose. The first team, it's PAC team, playing the team that we had on last week. Grove City, number 23, versus St. Vincent. We all went with
Grove City.
We picked against them one time, and they burned us, and we haven't done it since. Next up is Bates College versus Middlebury.
We all picked Middlebury.
Bury. I think it's Middlebury. That's a good catch there. Next up is number 12, Susquehanna. They've been on the board almost every week, minus their bye week, versus another former guest, Wilkes.
We all picked Susquehanna.
Yes. This is where the board gets a little different. SUNY Brockport versus SUNY Morrisville. This game is at Morrisville. U2.
Me and DB picked SUNY Brockport.
I'm going with the home team. I'm taking Morrisville. So that's a game that we'll have to watch closely because that'll determine the flip in the standings. Next up is number 10, Johns Hopkins versus Ursinus.
Johns Hopkins.
We all took Johns Hopkins. and I really hate DB, and I want to have it on record that some of these games he really wanted to test my pronunciation of some schools. So if I mess this up, I apologize. The next game is Saint Scholastica versus Carleton.
Carleton.
We all took Carleton. Next up is number 21 Muhlenberg versus Dickinson. We all took
Muhlenberg.
Once again, this is another this game here, big different on the board. Serenity in the
Augsburg versus St. Olaf.
And DB and I took St. Olaf.
That's the one I need. You guys still lose.
Next up on the board is the number 1 team in the country, North Central, against Washington University of St. Louis. And we all picked the number 1 team in the country. And then our game of the week, Lyco versus Keystone. A bit of a separation here. DB and I took Lyco.
I picked Keystone.
And then I had Sal pick him. And the only one he differs in is he goes with you guys with Brockport. So he picked every other game the same way. We're not going to go through and add him to the board. That would be dumb. So, how you feeling about your picks this week?
Feeling all right.
Really looking at that Olaf game.
I need that one. And no offense to our team of the week here, but I kind of need you to lose.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think Lyco.
Probably.
Lyco by 7. I'll go that far as to say Lyco by 7. Have anything else? I don't have anything else. We'll catch you guys next week. We are heading to Keene, and we'll be talking to their head coach. We've got some interviews going for the month of November, and then rolling into Ugly Sweaters and the last episode of the season. So it's it's quickly approaching. Yep. But stick around with us. We'll catch you next week, Chuckleheads.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Dingo Talk. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. For more info and to contact the show, you can find us on Twitter @DingoTalk.